Hey guys, what's up? It is week 263. That's right, 1 week before the 7th year anniversary. Never missing a show. I'm going to jinx myself and die before next week. But let's hop into the reviews. I have a big update for you. The first one up is going to be from the MVD Rewind Collection, and this is Graydon Clark's Joysticks. That's right, I think this had an initial release from Scorpion or Code Red Blu-ray. It's been long out of print, so a lot of people wanted to see this one. There was something originally wrong with the first, pressing, so they went ahead and just kind of postponed it, and now it's released, and everything's supposed to be fine with Joysticks. So here we go. Now, Graydon Clark is a guy I mostly know for more of his horror stuff, although he did do Black Shampoo, but he did stuff like Satan's Cheerleaders, Uninvited, which is a really fun killer cat movie, and of course Without Warning and The Return from 1980, both Without Warning is a pretty great movie. So Graydon Clark is kind of a B-movie, kind of underrated director, I'd say. So Joysticks, this is his first foray, or did he do Wacko first? Wacko he actually did in 1982. So he worked with Joe Don Baker in that one, and he got him to pop back up in Joysticks. So it's just one of these kind of flash in the pan kind of things that a director sees all these people playing in an arcade, and they're thinking, shit, man. This is big. Let's make a movie. So it's the 80s, so let's make a sex comedy involving arcades. You gotta fucking love that, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm mixed on, there's a couple movies I love by Graydon Clark, and a couple, they're okay, they're fine, I don't hate them. But Joysticks, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. Sex comedies are iffy as hell, especially from the 80s. When you watch them, they're dated, and a lot of them you'll have an affinity for because you grew up with them, or there's an occasional one that's just really an excellent film, like Last American Virgin. But a lot of them are, they're dated, and they're crummy, and the jokes don't land. But sometimes they work. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. In my sense of humor, it can be, I hate saying this, it's all over the place. It can be something really clever and smart or reoccurring, or it can literally just be fart and crap jokes. And I'll laugh. I almost laugh at everything. So I thought Joysticks was a blast. I laughed hysterically. So some of the people in here, of course, like I mentioned, Joe Don Baker. But the guy who steals the show, believe it or not, is right on the cover here. And I can't think of this actor's name. I'm going to have to look it up, and I'll know it when I see it. Jim Greenleaf. And this guy right here, he's in Evil Speak. He's one of the bullies who bullies poor old Cooper Smith, Clint Howard in it, which is a favorite of mine. And so I was watching this, and he pops up for a second. I was like, I recognize that guy. And he's just like, he's got a really dumb name like Pig or Barf or something stupid like that. And I was like, oh, this guy's just a throwaway character. And he becomes this major character in the film. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious. It's a very typical story, right? They have this arcade. There's a lot of fun there. The grandpa's out of town. So it's the young, hip grandkid taking over the place. There's hot babes. They're walking around without, nudity with their breasts hanging out. And they're having crazy parties afterwards at the arcade. Joe Don Baker is a politician of sorts, or a businessman, I can't remember, one of the which, and he essentially doesn't want his daughter going there, so this kind of upsets him, and this starts a catalyst that he has him and his two goons go there to try to break up the arcade, try to get it closed down. John Grise is in here as well. John Grise is no stranger to horror fans. Fright Night 2, Monster Squad, Terror Vision. He's also in Dead and his Ed and his dead mother, and of course, Napoleon Dynamite later on. Really good actor, was in Martin, the TV show, but just an underrated actor for sure, son of Tom Grise, who directed Will Penny. So Joysticks, he plays this punk, kind of in the vein of something like OD from Terror Vision, but he plays this punk that hangs around the arcade with his gang, and they play Pac-Man, really weird stuff. But I mean, they actually play Pac-Man as themselves. But what happens is it's just your typical Joe Don Baker trying to get this arcade closed, and it puts, I guess, your storyline, I wouldn't say jocks versus slobs kind of story, but it kind of is like rich versus poor, party kids versus, the businessman uptight people. Joe Don Baker's really funny in it because he never really goes over the top. A lot of times he's like, all right, son. There's a part where they show up really late at his house, and he's just like, it's 2 o'clock. What are you doing here? And in reality, if that happened to me, I'm like, get the fuck out of my house now. I'm going to kill you. And Joe Don Baker's like, what is going on? He's so somewhat calm, but still a prick. And I just think, I don't really give a shit, kid. It's funny. I just enjoyed the hell out of this. And who really steals the show is kind of the slobby guy who's constantly farting and eating and everything. He's like this movie's Booger. An ogre. Before Booger and Ogre. Because Revenge of the Nerds is 84, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a year before Revenge of the Nerds. When did Porky's come out? Probably a little before this, the Bob Clark movie. It's been a while, but you know, it's a little ahead of its time, right in its time, I should say. But it's ahead of some of the ones that people really like Revenge of the Nerds, which I grew up with, so I have an affinity for it, even though I know it's Rate Fest 2000. But so Joysticks, what we have here is the 2K scan restoration of 2015 from 35mm film elements in HD, and then we have auto LPCM 2.0 mono, optional English subtitles, new fan commentary by MV Deary Ryan Collection, Eric J. Williamson, Serial at Midnight's host Heath Allen, and Diabolic's Jesse Nelson. It's awesome. Audio commentary with director Graydon Clark, interview with director Graydon Clark, coin slots, fake movie trailer, short written directed by Noon Wallen. So it has a reversible cover art. I liked hearing Graydon Clark talk about this, and you know, it's pretty funny. And the cast really helps. It's got a good cast, because you could put a bunch of nobodies in this, or a bunch of people who couldn't act and didn't have any charisma, and it would fall really flat. But since you got Joe Don Baker, you got John Grease, you got a couple other people in here you recognize, they kind of all they work. And there's also another older character actor who's in a bunch of stuff who plays like the mayor. He's also very funny, he gets hooked on the games. I enjoyed this. I also like the 80s. I also like seeing nostalgia and arcades and all that kind of stuff. So it looked pretty good. It sounded good. I would watch this again. I like this kind of stuff, guys. This ain't for everybody. This ain't high art, but hey, it is what it is. It's Joysticks, and you'll like it. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you just don't like sex comedies from the 80s, and I don't blame you. They ain't everybody's cup of tea. All right, next up is from Cult Epics, and I think this is their first 4K release. I think so, and this is a Tinto Brass movie. Of course, Tinto Brass did stuff like Caligula, but Cheeky and stuff like that. He was more known later on in his career as kind of like the ass fetish kind of director. And this one is All Ladies Do It from 1992, and I've seen a couple other ones like he did the Budapest Snack Bar. See, I'm getting old, but there's this really kind of cool crime film, the Snack Bar one he did, that's pretty different from a lot of the other stuff that he's known for. But this one was kind of one of his, like, I guess I wouldn't say fetish, because there's a story here and that's not, and there's, like, some people would say is it softcore. In fact, on the commentary with Troy Howarth, and I want to make sure Eugenia Ercole, who's done a bunch of commentaries with Troy. They always do a good job together. They always and they bring context to each other and whatnot. But they talk about, is this softcore? Is this hardcore? Flirting the line. So essentially, there's no actual like penises or dicks in the movie. They're all prosthetics, but they're hard, and they do kind of show penetration with the mouth. So essentially, what we have here is kind of a free-spirited girl who's been married to this guy for about 4 or 5 years. She married very young. And she starts to kind of explore herself. She meets this kind of guy at a party, and he goes after her, sexually in a way. And I don't know if this was always, these feelings kind of have always been in her, but she always used to play these kind of games with her husband where she'd tell him, I had an affair, and it would get him hot. But it was always kind of, he understood it was fake. But now it starts to kind of have this real element to him. They definitely seem to come from like a rich kind of family, inheritance, money, all these kind of things like that. But as it goes on, she becomes more sexually free. And her husband obviously doesn't like this until at one point he realizes what's going on. And she had some sort of affair. She partook in, sodomy with somebody else. And it's like a new experience for her. All this kind of stuff like this. The director has a hyper focus on ass. So that's going to be a big part of the movie. The lead actress is nude in it a lot. There's a lot of like sexual explicit stuff. There is some flaccid dicks in here, of course. There is a really crazy rave scene that's pretty intense, pretty well shot. The sound mix is really excellent. I mean, this is a 4K. It looks gorgeous. So that rave scene stands out for sure. And there's definitely a playfulness to the entire film, to the characters, and to the relationships. And as they kind of break it down, you're thinking, what is all this about? Is this a coming of age? Is this a self-discovery? Is this an acceptance and society changing and all that kind of stuff? And Troy and Eugenio basically talk about this throughout the entire film. In the commentary. I listened to the commentary as well, and it helps with context and all that kind of stuff. And this was kind of one of his latter-day hits. And the lead actress would go on to be kind of a religious figure, so she doesn't really talk about this. She's not in the special features at all. But it looks great, and it sounds great, and there is some really kind of like heartwarming, touching moments. You are invested in the characters, and it is sexy in a lot of times, I will admit. I mean, the lead actress is gorgeous. She's nude in the movie a lot, and she has a certain, look about her and spontaneity that just kind of draws you in. And it comes down to a lot of kind of like rediscovering and all these kind of things. It's a very sexy movie. I wouldn't call it pornographic myself. I would say maybe more in the softcore vein, but it's more of a film. It's not just made just for that. It doesn't feel like it's just that. If that makes any sense. Because this is being the 90s. A 90s porn is not like 70s porn for sure. But there's a bunch of features on here. Of course, we have the 4K transfer with HDR, audio commentary with Eugenio Ercole and Troy Howarth, and then we have 4K trailers. Then we have also interview with director Tinto Brass from 2001, outtakes, All Ladies Do It. I think we also have some booklets and some cards in here. I don't know if I can show them. There's lots of butts. There's definitely a crazy little kind of opening in the very beginning here with some poetry that maybe awakens her. Whatever does, this party kind of does. But regardless, I thought this was good. I've seen a handful of his films. I'm not like the biggest expert. P.O. Box, Tinto Brass I've seen, of course. The Snack Bar, I can't think of that title. It's going to drive me crazy. I just want to keep saying Budapest. Snack Bar Budapest, is that correct? And of course, I've seen Caligula. But this one is pretty good, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. I definitely would watch more of his films. I think that the 4Ks look excellent. I think that Cult Epics always does a good job. Underrated company, very interesting, very, I would say, intellectual stuff for the most part. All their movies have like this kind of genuine intelligence to them, I would say. And not all of them are my favorite films, but I feel like I've learning world cinema, similar to Mondo Macabro. I'd say Cult Epics and Mondo Macabro are kind of the same vein, releasing a lot of films that not a lot of people are touching, but that they deserve to be released because they're interesting and good. And I would say Cult Epics gets bigger titles than Mondo. I mean, more popular titles for the most part. They focus on a lot of Tinto Brass and stuff, and they put out a lot of his earlier stuff too, like The Howl and stuff, and which I believe I've watched The Howl, which is a pretty crazy, bizarre film. But yeah, this is a good film. All Ladies Do It. Alright guys, the next one here we have The Shape of Night by Radiance Films, Japanese film from 1964, but you wouldn't be able to tell that. Not that that's an insult, because the movie looks gorgeous. And I always say this about a lot of Japanese cinema here, anything from like the 60s to the 90s, if they have a certain amount of budget, they all look like this certain unique quality about them, and they all look spectacular. This one, more so than a lot of the other ones. Wong Kar-wai, they say, is a precursor. This is definitely a precursor to his work, kind of the relationship stuff, kind of the high drama, kind of the tragedy, all this kind of stuff. Maybe a little bit of jumping around in the different, I wouldn't say storylines, but maybe the script-wise it doesn't really follow, I wouldn't say traditional narrative, but it jumps around a little bit. So what we have here is we're introduced to this woman, and she seems to be a prostitute, woman of the night. She meets this business guy, and this business guy seems to like her right away. As it progresses, we kind of see how she got there, and her story, and her current story at the time. So at first, she seems like a pretty regular girl, working at a bar, going to school, working in a certain place. She has aspirations and dreams and all these kind of things. Not necessarily all these kind of things, and wants to move forward. She meets this guy in a bar, and he starts to pick her up. At first, he seems very charming, takes her out. But as it goes on, he's like, well, I don't have money for this. I don't have money for that. And before she knows it, she's been kind of drawn into this prostitution by this low-level Yakuza loser who needs her to function. And as it goes on, their relationship becomes something completely different. At first, she's 100% seems like this victim, seems helpless. But as more and more happen to them, the guy actually seems more like helpless, completely relying on her, but she feels this obligation to help him. And at the same time, she's having this relationship with this guy who is telling her, I want to take you away from this. So it becomes this kind of struggle. There's some pretty dark stuff in here, especially with her involved with the Yakuza and him involved with the Yakuza. But a lot of this film takes place at night. You see the lights, the bright, kind of the lights of the street, and it looks gorgeous. A lot of the side characters are interesting. It's just an overall beautiful looking film with a really great lead performance here. You root for her the entire time. And it's definitely going to have this situation where it's completely aggravating in the best way, right? Like I would say, like Uncut Gems kind of drives you crazy, right? When you watch that film from a more modern perspective, how it's absolutely driving you nuts. And that might be editing techniques too that drive you fucking crazy in that movie, like Requiem for a Dream or Irreversible. They're purposely editing the fucking thing to make you go nuts. And they do that in those movies on purpose. But this one, it's just the aggravation of the character that you want them to do something so fucking bad. That's all you want. But in a way, you can't force it. You can't force the destiny. You can't force the fate. You can't force the feeling. And the end is just fitting. It's completely fitting. It's completely tragic. It's really sad. It's really well done. It's a really good drama with really well, done acting and cinematography and everything and story. It's a movie that you look at the runtime and like if I explain this, it's almost it's just under about 10 minutes under 2 hours, and you're like, that seems a little long, and you would think so, but it's not. It doesn't feel long. Everything plays well. I was never bored throughout the entire movie. And a lot of the times when they decide to show like violence or have a violent moment, a lot of it is off screen. I will say that. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have an interview with Yoshi Nakamura, visual essay on Shuchinko Studio in the 1960s by Tom Mez. Tom Mez knows his stuff. He talks about, beginning all the different studios. Easter egg, newly translated, there's an Easter egg apparently, new translated English subtitles, reversible sleeve featuring original and newly commissioned artwork by Time Tomorrow, limited edition booklet featuring new writing by critic Chuck Stevens, and new translation of archival writing on the film. Anyways, I thought this was pretty great stuff, AB, here, and it's not from, a lot of times when you're watching a lot of genre cinema or stuff that gets released, you're looking at a Toei or a Toho or even a Dakatsu. This is not. This is from one of the other 5 major labels from Toei. I mean, not from Japan, not Toei. But what was the other one? Dayu? I can't think of the 5th one. But there's 5 major companies at the time, and this is one of them. Interesting movie. I thought it was pretty great. Loved the look of it, and I've seen a handful of Wong Kar-wai films, and I prefer this one over a lot of them, honestly. I think it's just as good, if not better, than some of them. With that, he's famous kind of for his editing techniques as well, and I wouldn't say that's typically in here. I mean, like the kind of flashy or strange editing, I feel like, although maybe it's different for the time, I feel like it's a little bit more straightforward. But this is pretty great stuff. You guys know why you love this show? Because you go from Shape of Night, all ladies do it. We're going from Joysticks, and now we're going right to the Newlydeads. That's right, from 1989, TerrorVision releasing. City Lights picture here. It was edited on tape. They did it from a tape master. It still looks pretty good. I mean, there was an old tape, and there was an old Troma DVD. It's going to look much better than that. You know what? I've never seen the Newlydeads. I had the old Troma disc, and it was just in that pack, and I was always thinking, hey, it's whatever. A lot of those are pickups. Some of them are okay. Some of them are crap. You never know what you're getting with the Troma pickups. But I saw the trailer when they were releasing this, and I was like, wow, that looks absolutely ridiculous in the best way. So, the Newlydeads. I pre-ordered it, happy to have it. I really am enjoying what TerrorVision's doing. I haven't got a chance to watch all the releases, but they're putting out a lot of stuff that, from the 2008 to 2015 time was stuff that I was really into, that I reviewed right when it came out, like Chocolate Strawberry Vanilla. I still need to pick up. Love that movie. Parasites, I thought was really good. I'm going through their whole fucking catalog now, but there's Some Guy Who Kills People. All those movies I were like, oh, these are really kind of hidden gems from their time. And this one, the Newlydeads. Okay, so this one opens up in, I think, 1974, 73, talking, it has like some Watergate scandal on the radio. It also has, Bruce Lee died, and we have what you would say is a trans person driving. At the time, it's always, they talk about this in the commentary. It has a couple, like, famous people in the gay community, LGBTQ community. Let me say, Michael Verratti, who I used to be a Wasteland guy, and then Peaches Christ, who I believe is a famous drag queen. So they're talking in the commentary and stuff like that, and they kind of figured that this person would be more identified as a trans person, not a drag queen, not as a cross-dresser, whatnot. So because they're dressed driving and they're in female clothes and everything like that, and so they stop at this hotel, and the guy who runs the hotel is this kind of middle-aged guy. He's so matter of fact. He's perfect in this movie though, but he's like brings a bottle of wine, a courtesy of management, and he gives it to her and whatnot, and then he goes in to make out, and he runs the hotel. You think this guy does this all the time. It's a cool, nice little hotel, kind of woody one. I like it myself. And he goes to make out with her, and the wig comes off, and he's like, what the fuck? And the trans person's like, I thought you knew. And he's like, no, I didn't fucking know. And what happens is a fight. And what's beautiful is the trans person whoops the shit out of this typical masculine guy. So it's like, it's a reversal, right? Like, you think he's, not only did this guy, because he's like obviously going to be upset by this because it's 1973 in the movie and he's not into it. So he's upset that he accidentally made out with what he perceives as a man. And he just got his ass whooped by said person like that. So he's just like double insulted. And then he goes and he unfortunately kills this person. He covers it up. We fast forward to modern times, 1989, and we have a couple kind of driving cross country. One is which is a psychic. The other is her husband, who's in stuff like Teenage Exorcist and Mind, Body, Soul. He's a kind of character actor in a lot of these kind of cheap horror films and everything like that. You recognize him. I can't think of his name. But essentially, she's kind of going on about something bad happening on this road, while at the same time, our killer from the beginning here, who runs this hotel, is getting married. And he spots the person who he murdered a long time ago, kind of in a wedding dress, looking like a zombie ghost thing, and it kind of freaks him the fuck out. This zombie ghost runs into the street, of course, and the psychic thinks they hit it. They're the only two that see it, the psychic and the murderer. So she wants to stop here at this hotel, and right away, weird things start to happen, of course. The husband's upset, but there's a bunch of newlyweds here. This is a newlywed hotel. We got a couple strange couples, including an old couple where we have a lot of weird humor involving a hearing aid. It is what it is. And a drunken preacher marrying people. And we have some punk rockers. We have Doug Jones and his really out of his league girl that claims to him in his special features. He just says she was gorgeous and I was this skinny little dork, because he's in here. Doug Jones' first role, the Newlydeads, of course. Love Doug Jones. So this movie progresses. Of course, we're going to have Jackie, who is our trans character, as this evil ghost zombie go around and pick people off with one-liners like Freddy Krueger, and kind of do all these kind of crazy weird things. What's weird is, so the psychic in this fucking movie decides to help out this guy who's a murderer. He's like, you told me everything, right? And he's like, yeah. And the big reveal is not that he murdered this person. The big reveal at the end is Jackie was a man. Like, it's so funny. That's the big reveal to him. But regardless, this psychic tries to help, and some people get picked off here and there. There's some cops run in. The ending picks up, and there is a decent kill count in the movie. The gore effects are okay. They're not spectacular. It's a very low-budget movie. The character that really makes it is the trans character. They're fun. They're a killer. I like the idea. It has a cheesy, silly quality about it. The lead guy's good. The psychic is good. Overall, I think the movie's really fun. It's really cheap, but it pays off. I think it's kind of, I don't want to use the term campy. Campy's a word that you're like, how do you explain it? You know what I mean? I don't even want to use the term cheesy. I would say it's fun. It's a horror movie that's taken itself seriously. It tries its best. It obviously knows that there's some humor in there. It plays into that as well, and it works. It is what it is. It's enjoyable. It's fun, and there's a load of fucking features on the damn thing. So here we go. Commentary with Midnight Mass co-hosts, sleazy film historians Michael Verratti and Peaches Christ, of course. Interview with Doug Jones, which is great. 27 minutes of Doug Jones talking about his recollection of the movie. He gets pretty in-depth. He's a very sweet guy, you can tell. Interview with composer John Gonzalez. This guy went on to do other things. He's talking about working on this film for a long time. I'm trying to think. I feel like he's talking about is he the guy who mentions the sound, or was that the editor? I can't remember. It all kind of blurs together. Then we have an interview with Scott Caskey, who plays Jackie. Very open about it, talking about doing their own makeup, getting arguments with the makeup person, enjoying the film, calling trauma, talking to Lloyd, all this kind of stuff on there. Interview with Paul Volk, and that might be the editor on here, and he talks about them not getting good sound on there. And Newlydead created subtitles. There we go. Yeah, this is Region A. 2.0, 16. So if you like the Newlydeads, check it out. TerrorVision's doing a pretty good job. I'm enjoying it. I picked up a lot of their stuff. I try to pick up all their titles. I don't get them all. I get them like in bulk. I'll get like 5 or 6 at a time when I wait. But anyways, enjoyed this one. Check it out. It's fun. All right, we're going to hop into those 1982 movies.
I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's one.
son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, the love that will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to. Please stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
All right, first up is a banger. And this is the 4K release from Arrow Video. This is Frank Henenlotter's classic 1982 Grindhouse Sleaze Fest basket case. Don't worry, I'm definitely going to do a special video on basket case as well with some guests and everything, because from 1982, basket case is one of the best movies, one of the biggest movies, one of the brightest movies. I sound like Donald Trump over here. But, you know, it's just a movie that I have an affinity for, and I know a lot of other people do. But I just wanted to talk about the 4K because it's been newly released, and it looks pretty fucking good, because we all know that basket case is a dirt cheap movie. Frank Henenlotter's first feature-length film, made it basically over a year, collecting the budget, put this thing together, has 42nd Street backdrop. It is kind of like a weird kind of take on a lot of the so bad taste it's in good taste, or you know what I mean, all that kind of stuff. It comes from the school of Herschel Gordon Lewis and whatnot. So, you know, Henenlotter, or he loves Herschel Gordon Lewis, I should say, although I think I love his movies much more than Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. Basket Case is kind of this classic cult movie, and it's earned its reputation everywhere it's went. And it's been with me ever since I've been a kid. And every release it gets, I'm always very, very happy to have, you know, Belial with me, Belial and Dwayne with me. So yeah, it's super low budget. It's super grimy, and it's a revenge tale about a pair of Siamese brothers that were separated wrongfully, and now they pick off the doctors who did it. And one's a veterinarian, which is absolutely hilarious. So I might spoil this movie a bit, but yeah, this does have a lot of the same features as the the Blu-ray that Arrow put out a few years back. Maybe all of them. I don't remember seeing anything brand new on here, to be honest. And I've watched a lot of these special features before, so it was kind of like rehash on a lot of it. But it's okay. So, like I said, the plot of Basket Case is Dwayne, who is Kevin, I'm never going to be able to say his last name as much as I try. It's a very long name here. Kevin Van Henterick. Maybe that's all right, Hendrick. But he's essentially this young man who goes to New York to. In the very beginning, we see a doctor murdered, and he ends up going to New York with his the basket. It's his brother, his Siamese deformed twin brother. I should say conjoined. I don't think that term is particularly used anymore, but conjoined brother in a basket, and they're going on a revenge spree to kill the people who wrongfully separated them. We see him kind of intermingle with all these sleazy people in this crazy hotel, the Broslin Hotel. The guy who runs the hotel is perfect. What's in the basket? That's the catchphrase. Everybody asks what's in the basket. It's a giant wicker basket. Very, very iconic. And yeah, people get picked off by Belial. There's stop motion in here, done very rough by Henenlotter himself, but it has a certain charm to it. And if you listen to Henenlotter talk about the movie, he honestly talks about it as if, I was trying my best. It was more serious before. It had humor in it, but it was more serious until we started getting the budget. We started seeing it come together, and I just kind of had to embrace the humorous side because I didn't have the means to make it a little bit more serious in this darkly humorous thing. So I just embraced the humor. And, as Joe Bob Briggs would say on the special features, this was kind of its first of its genre. Now, there were parodies of the exploitation genre, but were they actually an exploitation movie in themselves? Like, if you look at something like Shellac by John Landis, I guess that would be a parody of the exploitation genre, right? Or something along that way. But Basket Case was a parody or self-aware referencing it, but I wouldn't say parody, but it was in love with it. It was still one. It still was a loving letter to it while being one and also being self-aware of it. That's kind of weird. It's a very tight rope to walk, you know what I mean? Like, when you're talking about throwbacks to slashers, like, is it actually work as a slasher as well? Because rarely does it. Those throwback to slashers, it's a throwback. They never really work as slashers because they're so self-aware that they kind of beat themselves and beat the audience over the head with it so fucking much that it no longer feels like a slasher. At least no longer feels like a slasher from the right time period. Now, Basket Case, according to Joe Bob Briggs, feels like it's supposed to. And I would agree, but he would be the expert on it growing up and watching the drive-through all these movies when they came out. But as far as I could tell, it's an exploitation movie through and through, a drive-through classic, if you will. And a 42nd Street movie, too. That this is one of the quintessential grimy New York movies when people like myself who've never been to New York and grew up watching him on horror movies at a young age would associate with New York City. Anything Glickenhaus produced, who, by the way, who would go on to produce a bunch of Henenlotter's movies later on. But I'm just saying these movies would become like that staple for me, like, Maniac or New York Ripper or this one, of course, and a lot of the other ones that just have that certain amount of city sleaze, New York City. And Basket Case is the quintessential of that. I love little creature films, too. This has got to be one of the best little creature movies ever made, along there with like stuff like Gremlins and Ghoulies 2 and Critters and stuff like that. It's different, though. It's more in that genre of the freaks, right? Or Freaks by, Todd Browning, that revenge aspect of these people being wronged or ridiculed or outsiders. There's a great moment where Beverly Bonner and, Dwayne here have this conversation where he gets drunk and he kind of spills the beans. He's my brother. And at first they're laughing, and then she realizes there's something truly deeply deranged about this guy and his brother, who's very small and deformed, room in Tenet 7, and Room 7 or something, Tenet and Room 7, whatever the old tagline was. But no, it's just a kind of a unique, grimy, weird film. The ending I think is fantastic. I think it's super iconic when we see Belial and Dwayne hanging and he's getting strangled. If this movie would have ended there, maybe it would have had more of an impact. I am a fan of Part 2 quite a bit, and I do like Part 3 to a certain extent. And I love his other films too, Brain Damage and Frankenhooker or Fawn Bad Biology. It's been years since I watched that one. But as far as Basket Case 4K, it looks really solid. I mean, you got to think this movie was shot on 16, right? Dirt cheap 16. It's grimy. It's in full screen, but it looked really good. There's stuff on the sides in the background, like, it's the Burger King back there. I never realized it was a Burger King. But you see a lot of stuff you never actually thought you'd see. As far as the special features go, there's tons of it. 4K restoration from 16 negative of Museum of Modern Art in cooperation with Frank Henenlotter. Then we have HDR10. Then we have, of course, PC mono audio uncompressed, optional subtitles, audio commentary with Frank Henenlotter and star Kevin Van Henderick, archival audio commentary with Frank Henenlotter, producer Edgar Levins, actor Bevier Bonner, and filmmaker Scooter McRae. Gotta love Scooter McRae from, of course, Shattered Dead director. Basket Case 3.5, interview with Dwayne Bradley, a short film by Frank Henenlotter. That's fun. Me and my Bradley Boys, interview with actor Kevin Van Henderick. Hentenrick, a brief interview with director Frank Henenlotter, strange 2017 interview with the director, Seeing Double, the Basket Case Twins, interview with actresses Florence and Mary Ellen Schultz, Blood Basket and Beyond, interview with actor Beverly Bonner, the Latvian Connection, featurette interview, including interviews with producer Edgar Levins, casting persons actor Izol Bazolis, associate producer special effects artist Ungus Nagels, and Belial performer Kira Nagels. Belial goes to the drive-in, interview with film critic Joe Bob Briggs, basket case at MoMA, footage from the 2017 restoration premiere, What's in the Basket? Feature-length documentary covering the 3 films in the Basket Case series, In Search of the Hotel Broslin, archival location featurette, The Prison of Fission, Basket Case Conjoined Twins and Freaks in Cinema, video essay by Travis Crawford, that's a good one. Slash of the Knife, 30-minute 1976 short by Frank Henenlotter, featuring many of the same actors from Basket Case, including optional audio commentary with Frank Henenlotter and playwright Mike Benavinci. Basket Case and Slash of the Knife outtakes, Belial's Dream, 5 minutes, animated short by filmmaker Robert Morgan, extensive image gallery trailers, TV, radio spots, reversible sleeve featuring original and newly commissioned artwork by Sarah Deck, double-sided fold-out poster featuring original and newly commissioned artwork by Sarah Deck, collector's booklet featuring writing on the film by Michael Gingold, and basket case comic strip by artist Martin Trafford, who is a cool guy and an actor. Is he an actor? Is that a different guy? No, he's not, but I've seen his artwork before. It's good. Yeah, crazy movie, great on 4K. I love to see it. Yeah, more classics on 4K, Arrow and everybody. We're loving them, and this one looks great. Next up, from 1982, more of a sword and sandal fantasy movie by Albert Pune, his first directed film from 82. This is The Sword to Sorcerer. It's been years since I watched this movie, but finally revisited again on 4K. It stars 2 of my favorites in here, Richard Lynch and Richard Mole. And Richard Mole steals the show as Zusha. Is his name Zusha? He is this warlock, man. He looks fucking awesome. So this is a sword and sorcerer movie. In the very beginning, we have Richard Lynch as this evil king who kills another kingdom, kills the mom and dad of this young boy who tries to escape, and he has this like awesome sword that he's given that shoots swords, 3-bladed sword. He gets away. Richard Lynch gets hurt. He's very pissed off about the entire thing, and he basically calls for the help of Zusha, who is this warlock, to kind of go on this like blood spree. I believe, I don't remember when he exactly did this, but he uses Zusha, who's this very heavy, powerful warlock who's like this monster, and Richard Mole from Night Court and House and Evil Speak. Again, I'm talking about Evil Speak. But so essentially Richard Lynch double crosses this guy. So now we have a Richard Mole who's been laying low as this injured warlock ready to strike at any time, and our hero who's grown up and he's this kind of thief and this kind of swashbuckling. I know he's not swashbuckling, it's his fantasy, but he has that kind of MO swashbuckling deal. Jeff Corey also makes an appearance. People would know Jeff Corey from a million movies, including last week's Cincinnati Kid. But so anyways, it's of course, our hero here has to rescue this woman from Richard Lynch, because Richard Lynch wants to marry her, while also Zusha is going to go after him, and all sorts of crazy fun adventures are going to take place. Now there's a couple moments of pretty intense horror and gore in here. In the very beginning, when we raise Zusha in the blood like cave and mountain, you're like, this is really good stuff. And you could tell kind of this directing style and things. You could see a little bit of Nemesis in here, or Cyborg, that Albert Pune would do later on. This is one of his better directed films, but then again, this is probably one of the bigger budget films that Albert Pune had, and he talks about getting the money for this and begging for it and all this kind of stuff, and eventually getting lucky. Somebody actually said a couple $1 million, and he did it, and he said he had a terrible time directing this movie. He was planning on quitting all the time, and the lead actor talked him back into it, all this kind of stuff here. But yeah, the thing that I always liked about this, like I said, I'm going to keep coming back to Richard Lynch and Richard Mole, because when I saw this almost 18 years ago, that's what stood out to me. I never forgot them. Cromwell's mine. I remembered his name. It left an impression on me, and they still hold up. Lynch is always such a good villain, but I'm going to tell you, man, Richard Mole in this is a scary, awesome villain. And the end showdown is awesome. The way he comes in, the way he controls things. Overall, this is a pretty solid sword and, fantasy movie. There's not that many great in the genre. I mean, I love Conquest. I like Conan the Barbarian. And, of course, this was probably based off Excalibur getting made and being a hit and all that kind of stuff. But, around the same time as Conan. And Conquest was a year later, in 83. So we have a lot of the big sword and fantasy movies then. And the ones that actually seem to have some sort of competence behind them. There's a lot of really shitty ones, too. It's a genre that's full of crap. So the ones that stand out, they really stand out. And this is probably a B movie considered, honestly. But I thought this one was enjoyable, and rewatching it, I still enjoyed it. But the lead, I don't love the lead. I don't think he's horrible. He's just not, he wouldn't be my choice. And they actually, who did they turn out? They turned down David, who's the guy from the Baywatch? I can't believe David Hasselhoff was supposed to be the lead at one point, and they kind of went against it, whatnot, before he's famous. As far as the features are concerned, we have new audio commentary with Albert Pune, R.I.P. Then we have new interviews with actress Kaylin Beller, co-writer, co-producer John Stuckmeyer, Elliot Marshall Harvey, special effects artist Alan Apon, and more. And we also have an interview with Albert Pune on here as well, I would say. I remember watching that. But yeah, it looks good. It sounds good. It sounds good. It's a little iffy because the sound was a little iffy on this entire thing here. What do? They mentioned that the sound, they had a 5.1, but it wasn't great, and they had some damaged elements, so it was all right. There was a little hiss, but it wasn't too bad. I should mention, of course, Anthony De Longus is in here. That's Blade from Master Universe, and of course Robert Tessier, who they spelled Robert wrong. They put Robber. Okay, whatever. I believe it's Robert. But Tessier, who's in The Longest Yard, he's in The Deep, he's in Hard Times, he's the mean guy. He plays basically a mean guy his entire career. He's in that really crummy movie, Future Force, with David Carradine, where he plays the villain. I think it's called Future Force, where he's like the cop with the metal arm. Yeah, it's crummy but fun crap. But yeah, Sword and the Sorcerer, check it out. I enjoy it. It's pretty good stuff. Okay, the next one up is a VHS here from Sony, and this is Honeymoon Horror. Everybody's favorite slasher from 1982. Now, watching a lot of these slashers from 82, I'm like just shocked how... I guess I'm not shocked, but it's just surprising how bad the quality has gotten compared to 81. 81's like the heyday, right? We have so many good fucking slashers from 81. Like Happy Birthday to Me, The Burning, Madman, My Bloody Valentine, Friday the 13th Part 2, Halloween 2. You're like, this is a plethora of good slashers. And even some of the crappier ones that everybody hates, like Home Sweet Home and Hospital Massacre. Is like, these are better than the ones I've been watching from 82. But I watched Island of Blood and, Honeymoon Horror. Honeymoon Horror was a first-time watch. I'd never seen this one. At the very beginning, we have a wife cheating on her husband. They own this kind of resort. Again, very similar to Newlydeads, right, where they rent this like hotel. It's on an island, and a lot of people go there for their Newly Dead Honeymoon Horror. We have Honeymoon Horror, double Honeymoon Horrors in here. So essentially, she's cheating on her husband. The husband walks in. He's like, what the hell's going on? Him and the guy get in a fight. There's a fire. He gets badly burned. He gets killed. Years later, they cover it up. They are married now, the guy she was cheating with, and they're going to have a bunch of people coming in. There's sorority girls that want to come in and decorate for their friend, and then 3 couples coming to stay the night, basically for the weekend and whatnot. But right away, there's somebody lurking. There's a POV. We see these eyes in the woods, and we know who the fuck it is. There's no surprise here what's going on. There is a sheriff here and a deputy. I have to give this guy an award for the shittiest sheriff I've ever seen in a fucking movie. If you guys think Death Screams had a bad sheriff, if you guys fucking think White Lightning had a bad sheriff, and I'm not talking like the acting caliber from Ned Beatty. He's great in that. But if you think he was a crooked sheriff or just a bad sheriff overall, even though he's a mass criminal killer, he was. But this sheriff is shittier. I shouldn't say that. He's not. But he is just the most dog shit lazy sheriff I've ever seen in a fucking movie. Like, he makes the guy from, what is that one from Final Exam, that sheriff, seem like a goddamn hard worker. Or the guy from Death Screams, like a hard worker. This is the worst sheriff I've ever seen in a movie. This is my rating here. Vote for this was worst sheriff. And he's not really an actor. Him and the deputy have a lot of comedy scenes that's like cut out of Town That Dreaded Sundown or Last House on the Left. They're like, let's find like the worst scenes from 2 really good movies, Last House on the Left, Town That Dreaded Sundown, and make that in our movie too. Let's do that. That would make this better. That would pad the runtime. So it's like a really dog shit fucking interaction between the sheriff and the deputy. And the sheriff's just an ornery fucking whiny bitch. I can't stand him. I know I'm like going at this. It's not like he's the worst actor. Just a character. He's like, I don't want to do that. If I was the deputy, I would have shot that dude in the back of the head and throw him in the river. He is so fucking annoying. I'm going off on this guy. Like, this is the most heated I've been about any cop in a movie ever. Fuck that cop. Piece of shit. He's lazy. He's greedy, he's lazy. But anyways, what happens is about 30, 40 minutes of not much happening here. And then, of course, eventually the killer strikes and people get killed. There's some nudity in here, not as much as you think for a lot of people talking about how horny they are and how much they want to have sex, and 3 young couples and everything like that. You think there'd be tons of nudity. You think there'd be tons of sex. There is sex, but there's not much nudity. There's very little nudity here and there, kind of. But there's like 4 couples on here that are hot for each other, talking about how much they want to have sex. You're not seeing it. And people are like, know, it sucks. You do when you're bored. You do when it's boring. You do when it's uneventful. You do when there's not great gore. You do when the storyline's pretty generic. You know, at first, and Dave Z, my friend, was telling me, talking about this in the podcast, how bad Honeymoon Horror was. And I started watching. I was like, it's all right. It's pretty standard. And it's not good. No, it's bad. It's not as bad as Dave Z says, but it's fucking bad. It's pretty crummy. It's a pretty mediocre-ass slasher. The cop stuff doesn't help. You know, the ending is sloppy as shit. The humor is ill-placed, misplaced, and it's way too late for that. In 82, we're doing this humor that should be, like, basically in the early 70s at best. For the Grindhouse Drive-In movies, that's just a part of their things. Even Stingray had it, but maybe the 70s we can get away with that kind of weird humor, like, hey, this girl just got gang raped, and jokes. But that's just the way those movies were. I've learned to kind of accept it and like some of the movies, love some of the movies, even against it. But sometimes when it's just late, you're like, boy, what the fuck are we doing here? And this is the only film that I think they made and directed. And like I said, the killer ends up showing up at the very end. It's no surprise who it is. It's hilarious when he throws the knife. So fucking bad. But yeah, this is not good. This is not a good movie. I'm sorry, guys. If you guys like Honeymoon Horror, is this a Sony picked this up? Like, that's kind of shocking, man. They must have been hungry for slashers, unless this is like, no, that's Sony. It's a subdivision of this, and it's not actually something. Whatever. I don't fucking know. I just know I had the VHS for years, and it said Sony on the side. But I love the cover art. The killer don't look too bad. The gore's not great. The kills aren't great. The characters aren't great. The pacing's not great. It's just not great. Don't think the music's too good. The location's cool. You know, I would put Island of Blood above this, which is similar to Trapped on an Island, Isolation. I would put Newlydeads above it, for sure, which is kind of the honeymoon horror kind of thing we have going on. I feel like there's one more thing I want to mention. Oh, there's a handyman in this movie, and they mention him in passing with a derogatory, outdated term, of course. That's just the way it's going to be in these movies. But they keep calling him and talking about him, like, that's Joe, that's Joe, that's Joe. And you never get a good look at Joe, but at one point somebody sets fire to the boat, and they're like, it had to be Joe. And then all of a sudden we cut to this old man who's like, in the woods. And it's just like, if that guy ain't like they didn't pull that guy from the dankest, darkest fucking back alleyway and just give him a bottle and say, bro, it's on us this weekend. Come make this movie. I don't know. That guy is such a back alleyway drunk. If he's not, he's just the best actor I've seen since Crazy Ralph. Okay? But regardless, Honeymoon Horror. It's not the worst movie I've seen this year. What would that be? I don't know, man. Fair Game? Fair Game sucked. Mediocre. Both these are just really... No, this is the worst. This might be the worst. I got to think what I watched. There's a couple crummy ones. I've been getting a lot of the crummy ones out of the way because I made the mistake last time. I watched a lot of great horror movies in the very beginning for 81, and then I'm like, what the fuck? And I had a lot of like non-horror and semi-horror and just really bad TV movies that I had to watch, and now I'm just like, I'm going to pick them out. I'm going to get some, you know, some of the big ones, you know, some of the crappy ones are the ones I'm not too familiar with out of the way right in the beginning and move through the year. But Honeymoon Horror. All right, the next one here is Mongrel. That's right. It's kind of a killer dog movie, or the cover would suggest it is. It's directed by Robert. Oh my God, Robert. What am I forgetting his name for? I just had it in my head. Robert Burns, the guy who did the set decoration on Hills Have Eyes and stuff like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He would go on to play the Henry Lee Lucas character, Daniel Lee or something like that is what they call him, or Daniel Hawkins in Confessions of a Serial Killer from 1985, which is a really underrated film. He's a great performance in that. So this is the only film he ever directed, called Mongrel. It stars Aldo Ray. Aldo Ray's back last week. Like it never even existed, or whatever that Aldo Ray movie I watched, fucking Dark Sanity, a couple weeks ago. Not good. But Aldo Ray was in it. Yeah, and he's in this one too. And Mitch Pileggi. That's right, Mitch Pileggi. Shocker him fucking self, also from X-Files. Good actor. So that's basically the two names you would know. Aldo Ray essentially runs this, I don't know, it's like a hotel, basically big house. He rents out rooms to all these people, and there's a bunch of strange people in here. This nice guy moves in looking for a room. He's taking one of his buddies' rooms, and the whole place is full of weirdos. There's a kind of a really strange guy that keeps to himself. Jerry, is he? He's a nice guy, but he's strange. He immediately becomes smitten with this guy in like a man crush kind of way. There's a really like nice girl that lives there as well that everybody likes. There's Mitch Pileggi, who's a dick. He's kind of he's not a hillbilly. He's just a kind of an overall doofus, but kind of a dummy, big idiot. And he has a girlfriend who kind of seems hippy dippy. Then we also have this guy named Ike who's obsessed with military stuff. You get it, Ike Eisenhower, whatever. And he has this mongrel dog that's kept outside that's vicious and barking and whatnot. So essentially what happens is one day this dog gets off the chain and attacks somebody. Somebody shoots it. Mitch Pileggi shoots it, and it dies. Ike's pissed off, And then as it goes on, we basically start to see people get mauled to death, by a dog. Seemingly they're bitten, they're chewed up, they're killed. A lot of the kills are off screen. There's a couple on screen, but there's going to be a little mystery to it. It kind of slows down. Mitch Pileggi's good in it. I really thought he was solid in it. Aldo Ray's fine in it. Everyone else is just okay. They're not horrible, but it's kind of a slow kind of thing. Psychological, of course. We got to get this idea, like, is there a haunted dog? Is there just another dog? Is it somebody acting like a fucking dog? I don't want to spoil too much, but you kind of get that idea. And people start to get picked off until there's not many left. And Aldo Ray kind of comes back at the end. That's the damnedest thing I ever saw. The damnedest thing I ever saw. For somebody like Robert Burns, who is exceptional at set design, the set design was okay here. It's kind of hard to see what the fuck's going on because it's a VHS. You don't see the immaculate detail and or like it's not like going to be Texas Chainsaw, right? Where you're like, this is real. This is fucking real. No, it's set designed perfectly, and the actors are going crazy in that hot heat. But I like Robert Burns. I like all his work that he did on other movies. I like his acting. But this movie's not great. It's not horrible. It's better than fucking Honeymoon Horror, I'll tell you that. And it has some interesting aspects. I would prefer if it had a Blu-ray and I could see what the hell's going on, some backstory on it. And it's very unique that this is the only film he directed. And he's got a couple actors that are known in it. I mean, you got to assume this is made in Texas, right? I just have to guess. I mean, that's what I would guess. But I gotta, maybe I'll throw that end with Aldo Ray on there. That's the damnedest thing I ever saw. Like, keep the Aldo Ray love going on. Like, at the end of this review, just have a weird Aldo Ray clip. He's better in this. And he's kind of scary in it. I just think the editing was so poor in Dark Sanity, they couldn't have, nobody's going to come across good in that when you leave 30-second pause between every actor's line. But so Mongrel, I kind of like it. I can't recommend it, but I kind of like it.
God damnedest thing I ever saw.
All right, now here we go here. The Shaw Brothers flick, Curse of Evil. This is directed by the guy who did Boxer's Omen and a handful of other Shaw Brothers flicks, some of which I've covered from 1980 and 81, but 1982, Curse of Evil. Now this is a convoluted story here. So we open up and we basically have this family that in the very beginning there is a big family of 8 and they are said to be murdered or something like that. I can't remember. 13 family members were murdered 20 years ago. And they were thrown into the well in this big mansion. They were the richest family around this area. And 20 years ago, all of them were killed except the mother and one kid. So that's what happened here. And then we fast forward 15 years after that. And they're having this big part where the kids are growing up. He's 15. No, so it's basically 20 years after that. The kid grew up, and then we're at 15 years after that. So now this guy's 35 or something like that. It gets really convoluted. So he's poisoned. The only son is poisoned here. The grandmother's older now. He's been poisoned. And he dies. The mother dies shortly after that from a heartache. So now we leave 2 grandkids. They're the only ones left in the family lineage along with the grandmother. So basically what they have here is they move in some in-laws and they have some like old butler kind of guy that's been there to take care of the family, a cook, and another maid. And they're all kind of in this house and weird shit starts going on right the fuck away. And it doesn't take long to start. This movie's 80 minutes and we already have all that backstory within the first like 10 minutes. And you're like, this is already crazy enough. And what happens is we start to have these this evil demon. I kid you not, the thing looks like it's from Brian Poland's Fetus. This weird kind of snake like demon creature comes out and it starts raping women to death. It rapes somebody to death and I'm just like, holy shit. Like, this can't be, like, because you watch so many of these Shaw Brother movies where you think it's a supernatural aspect, and it's like, it's really just, hereditary greed or somebody pulling a fast one. You're like, this can't be, can it? This can't be. And then, like, I'm not going to spoil if it is or not, because it's a fucking Shaw Brothers movie, so it's like, it's always somebody up behind something doing something, like if you watch Corpse Mania or Bewitched. Although, they do have supernatural elements, especially Bewitched, I would say, definitely a supernatural element. So this one, as it progresses, like, they're like, the thing's crawling into the well. It's really weird and really crazy, and the effects are bonkers. But besides, giant slithering rape demon, we also have fucking flesh-eating frogs? I'm not making this shit up, with metal teeth? And, like, somebody, of course, is going to get killed by the flesh-eating metal frog. And then the people start getting picked off left and right. It picks up the pace. And then the very end reveal, you're just like, holy shit. That's awesome. Curse of Evil, I don't want to spoil anything. Love the special effects, love the insanity, love the brutality, man. This is a cool ass Shaw Brothers movie. That's why when a lot of people are like, Shaw Brothers don't have that many more that I want. Like, I want them to release the horror movies. I'd love to see Sitting of a Ghost get a United States release. I know I had the 88 films overseas, which I have, but a lot of people deserve to see that. Curse of Evil, The Lost Souls, so many cool ass Shaw Brothers horror movies that are not out yet. And Hong Kong movies in general, The Imp, The Beast. And this is only going from 80 to 81 now to 82. And I've found so many cool hidden gems from Hong Kong that just is like the unsung hero of all these early 80s years that just like nobody's like releasing a lot of these. Some of them are getting released, and I love seeing that, from Air 444 and Vinegar Syndrome and On Earth and Massacre. A lot of them are picking these Hong Kong movies up, rightfully so. 88 Films, Eureka, and I love it. I love seeing it. Curse of Evil, great stuff. Highly recommended. My favorite 1982 movie this year, besides a fucking basket case. That's a big one to go against, right? But yeah, I love this movie. I would definitely buy a Blu-ray, definitely buy a DVD, even check it out, Curse of Evil. Okay, the Patreon pick here is also the weekly Western. So we have the Appaloosa. This is 1966, starring, of course, Marlon Brando and John Saxton. And Jeanette Comer, who is an actress I'm not too familiar with, to be honest. This also has Emilio Fernandez, of course, from The Wild Bunch, and, of course, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and a slew of other movies, including Breakout with Charles Bronson. Those are 3 Peckinpah movies previously mentioned, of course. But, Marlon Brando, I've seen a handful. I like his stuff. What's the one? The Chase, great stuff. John Saxton is my guy. John Saxton's been my guy since I've been 10 years old, watching all his movies and whatnot. And I love Emilio Fernandez as Mapache from Wild Bunch. He always does a good job. So this was a 1966 Western directed by Sidney J. Furie. And I had not seen this one. So this is a Patreon pick, I think, by Chris Rivers. So watching this, I was like, oh, this is pretty good stuff. We have Marlon Brando, recently released from war. He has this beard, clearly fake. He goes into this small town, goes into a church, needs to wipe his face down. There is a woman in the church. Emilio Fernandez is there too and kind of smiles at him in a weird kind of sinister way, obviously a villain. And he washes his face. He starts to pray for forgiveness, talks to the father. He says, I killed men. I didn't mean it. It was in war. I just want to live a good, clean, honest life. He's trying to get back to a way of his family. And there's trouble. John Saxton's girlfriend basically gets him involved with something, says some things that didn't happen. John Saxton plays a Mexican bandit kind of guy. Emilio Fernandez is right-hand man. He has some other goons. And there's not a misunderstanding, but a way for John Saxton to try to save face. And Marlon Brando's not having it because he mistreated him. He wants his horse. He pisses him off. He goes back to his family, which he was adopted kind of into this family. It's a Mexican family. They have several kids and everything, and he loves them. They decide to get really drunk the first day they're back, talk about, selling this horse, building a ranch, having a life together. Of course, John Saxton comes back with a goon, of course, Emilio, and they steal his horse. He's drunk. He can't do anything about it. They embarrass him. So it becomes his kind of his only goal is to get this fucking horse back, live or die. He doesn't care. That horse meant so much to him. He has this big kind of exposition dumping just to kind of flex Marlon Brando's acting muscle, which he, is obviously a great actor, so he does this big dump. He's like, that horse to me, yada, 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 good stuff. And him and Saxton have a good back and forth. They do this arm wrestling scorpion thing, which I really liked. And, Marlon Brando isn't a world beater. He gets the shit kicked out of him. He fails, but at the very end, and the end shootout is not your typical, good, bad, and ugly standoff against each other, looking at each other face to face. It's not your last week, the Tin Star, where you're going to show up to the bad guy. It's kind of guerrilla style film. I mean, it's not filmmaking, but shootouts. And in a way, it's a little bit more realistic in some ways. Overall, I think this is really good. Saxton is great, even if he is clearly not Mexican in real life. Brando is also really strong in it, and Emilio Fernandez is made to play this kind of bandit. He's great in it. He's always good. I always like seeing him. Director himself, made a lot of films. Pretty crazy guy, from my understanding. Very dangerous guy. But I really like this one. This is good stuff. I have no complaints. Most Westerns I love. There is another commentary by Lee Pfeiffer, publisher of Cinema Retro Magazine, with film historian Paul Scrabo. And this was nice, too, because they start talking about Westerns, and they start saying, hey, they said that the Western was dead in the 50s. That's not true. You look at the spaghetti Western, you look at tons of Westerns that came out in the 60s and whatnot, and they're talking about all sorts of movies. So it's just not true. John Wayne was making a lot of Westerns in the 60s too, and they talk about that, and they like this movie. They bring up the cast. They do a good job in the commentary. It's Kino Lorber. Looks good, sounds good, does have subtitles, but I would recommend this one. great stuff, and that is, of course, the name of the horse on there. So, yeah, good stuff. Let's get these questions and comments done. That's how I talk now. All right, Ken Coakley. I was wrong about Paul Dano being Royal Dano's grandson. Turns out they're not related. Back when Little Miss Sunshine came out, an article in a publication whose name I can't remember said he was Royal Dano's grandson. Something similar happened with The Eyes of Laura Mars when released. It was Tommy Lee Jones' breakthrough role. TV Spot said that he was the son of Disney actor Dean Jones. They even looked alike, but I haven't heard anything about it since. Now about the update. The Dawn of the Dead t-shirt is awesome. The artwork is amazing, especially the iconic No More Room in Hell. So iconic that my best friend, shout out to Melissa Buenaventura, that's her name, was starstruck when we met Ken Forey at Rock Shock in 2005. She's not a horror nerd, but likes Dawn of the Dead. She turned to me and said, I can't believe we're meeting the guy who said when there's no more room in hell. She likes horror a lot, but she's not obsessed like I am. On the subject of Black Mass, Jet Li's costume is a replica of Kato from the Green Hornet's costume. Before Black Mass, there was a Hong Kong film called The Green Hornet. Even though it was Kato's costume, this film starred Kar Lok Chin in the title role. I had Goodbye Uncle Tom on DVD as part of the 3-film set from Blue Underground. I watched it, but don't remember much of it. I had to get up the nerve to watch it. Even a first-rate film or miniseries about slavery would be upsetting. I remember watching Roots, and a character showed a blueprint of a slave ship. It made me sick thinking about all the human beings who would never know freedom, ever. Schindler's List, which I didn't watch until 1999. I tend to get tearful when it comes to films depicting the Holocaust, slavery, the crucifixion, and 9/11. Understandable. Lastly, about the Cincinnati Kid. I had the Blu-ray, but I have it now on Fandango at home. It was directed by one of my favorite directors, Norman Jewison, who also worked with McQueen on the Thomas Crown Affair here in Boston. My favorite Jewison film is Jesus Christ Superstar. I own this because I'm a huge McQueen fan. If you haven't seen The Towering Inferno, I recommend it. McQueen was supposed to play Rambo in First Blood, but he got sick. We know that he unfortunately died in 1980. One thing about the Tin Star is that Lee Van Cleef appeared in 2 iconic westerns, High Noon and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. He's paired up with Strother Martin and Lee Marvin in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and there's a funny fucking scene where Strother Martin gets kicked right in the fucking face. Ray Hate Butler, I can't imagine how much that wall behind you is. Soon to be lost media. Indeed. Subjective Perspective Collective, double dipped on the comments, sorry, but just saw you grab the Gainesville Ripper. He's from my hometown, Shreveport, Louisiana, and was an inspiration for Scream. I have heard that, Danny Rowling. Yeah. Then he also says, I've recently been digging into the spaghetti westerns more. Just watch Massacre Time from Fulci. It's a fun time, but love Fulci's For the Apocalypse. Great stuff, as always. Glad to see you adding weekly western. Man, I love Massacre Time and For the Apocalypse. I've never watched Silver Saddle, but I'll have to do that. User, basically their name didn't pop up here, so it's Rip Torn, not Thorn. See, I did it again. I do know that. I don't know what's wrong with me, losing my brain. And Subjective says, I was just thinking he's going to realize that. Sometimes I say his name so fast I don't realize I'm saying Thorn instead of Torn. But yeah, sorry about that. Nick Moore from Belgium. I'm learning to like westerns again. The great ones take me back to happy, carefree days watching them with my granddad, who loved this genre almost as much as World War II movies, probably because he's a soldier during said war. I was intrigued to learn that Anthony Perkins did a western. Seeing him in a non-horror role was like watching Vincent Price not camping it up in Witchfinder General, aka Conqueror Worm. I do recommend 88 Films' re-release of it. Questions. Do you think it's permissible for a director to treat his cast harshly if the end result is excellent performance? By now we all know Michael Reeves and Vincent Price pretty much hated one another during the filming Witchfinder, though Mr. Price later agreed this film contained some of his best acting ever. He even wrote Reeves a letter to apologize. Now, here's what it is. I don't know. Physical abuse, no. Unless the actor says it's okay. It depends. It depends what they said, how they said it, all sorts of things. I could take a lot, and it depends if I think the performance is coming out good. Just on asking questions, no. You shouldn't treat people like that. If you can't get the performance out of them without treating them like shit, then they're not the guy for you, or you're not the director for them. But in reality, things are different. I don't know what I'd say. Times were different back then. I don't know. Not there. Were you ever treated badly on the films you did? If so, what was the end result better for it? Not really. I mean, there was shitty scheduling conflicts, right? That drive a lot, unorganized, just people being idiots. Nobody purposely treated me bad. I mean, I had to do a lot of my own stunts and had a lot of minor nagging injuries. Safety wasn't always a concern, to be honest. I was, yelled at to be quiet a couple times, but that's expected when you're being an idiot. I hope you enjoy Dance Macabre Volume 2. It looks like a great set. Stoke Scab 1, Head of the Family was the last Full Moon movie that I really liked. I love Empire and early Full Moon, but man, once they start pumping out shit like Evil Bong and Ginger Dead Man, I stopped watching. Yeah, that stuff's not mine either. My favorite. Indie Phantom, Son of Cinema. Donuts are a weakness for me too. Birthday coming up, and they are often a cake substitute. Love the update. I need to see Bloodlink for the cast alone. Michael Moriarty always does some crazy stuff, and sometimes it's way out there. I remember he pretty eccentric in Pick Me Up for Masters of War. Happy early birthday. Love donuts. Non-chain donuts, though, like actually from like a small like bakery. Best. Explosive Action. A Corpse for Christmas gets my interest. At least I see Acid Witch on the soundtrack. Nice. Zombie Adams. Goodbye Uncle Tom is still as shocking today as it was when it was released. Jason Bovey. The irony of Dave talking about a blade sodomy and black candles was massive, given that I watched Blank Face yesterday. You know, I completely forgot that. Yep, it happened in the movie. Incarnate. I wish someone released Burned at the Stake. I recorded it over 25 years ago on the Sci-Fi Channel before it was Sci-Fi, with the stupid name thing, and I need a better looking copy. Me too. I like it. I think it could be kind of a rediscovery for some people. Incarnate. Those donuts are killer. LOL. Spiking that insulin and then crash and burn. I've been there many a time. I'm a fan of the 70s and 80s devil movies and seen just about all of them, but I gotta admit, this one made me feel just dirty. I think mostly it was a scene with the goat. LOL. One bright spot for me was seeing a Helga line in it. Loved her in Horror Express, Nightmare Castle, The Blancheville Monster, and especially Lorelei's Grasp. You get to see Helga in all her glory. Love fucking Horror Express. One of the most underrated horror movies ever made. Okay, let's get in the questions and comments. I just did that, but I'm a question of the week. Please give me your top 10 horror films from 1982. Give me 10. Do not give me more than 10. Put them in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll add them all up. If it's number 1, it gets 10 points, and I'll do the collective top 10 or collective list from everyone. But make sure it's listed as a horror movie. Make sure it's listed from 1982 on Internet Movie Database. Please give me your top 10 from 1982 horror movies. Thank you. Let's get in this update. All right, got a pretty big update here, so let's start off first. We got Silver Bullet from Scream Factory, 4K here. Love Silver Bullet, 1985. Dino De Laurentiis produced. Did the buy two, get one at Target. Couldn't pass it up. Always love this movie. Look forward to rewatching it in 4K. Then we got Natural Born Killers, has the director's cut in 4K and the theatrical cut in Blu-ray. Big fan of this movie, 94. Oliver Stone, great cast in here, amazing cast. Written by Tarantino. He disowns this one, but I always enjoyed it. Grows on you just because it's so fucking crazy. Then we have Young Guns on 4K, one of my all-time favorite westerns. Grew up with this one. Good cast in here for sure. Love Casey Simatsko in here, Charlie Bowtry, and great stuff here. Yeah, look forward to watching that in 4K. Then we got Duel by Steven Spielberg. Believe it or not, I've only seen parts of this on TV. Never seen Duel. Never seen the entirety. Isn't that insane? 4K. Gonna definitely check this out for the first time in that format. The Man from Nowhere. Well-Go release here on 4K. I believe I've seen this movie. I think this is the one I've seen. I remember it being excellent. If this is the one where he's protecting the little girl, it looks like it. Great movie. Look forward to revisiting. Been a while. Then we have some of these crazy indicator releases here. We have, all these are 4Ks. We have Snapshot, which is an Australian film. Bought a lot of these on the buy two, get one. These look so cool, man. The releases are so heavy duty. Just look like awesome releases here. All movies I probably bought 6 or 7 times. We have Patrick, great Aussie movie, cool stuff here. There is a sequel that's unofficial from 1980. Patrick Still Lives, crazy movie. We got Black Magic Rites. This is Renato Pacelli, weird movie. I can't remember the AK name. The Reincarnation of Isabel. Yeah, I watched this one for 22 shots on Italian Horror Week. It's a good film. Again, another 4K. Then we have Cold Eyes of Fear. This is a giallo that I never got to see. I imported one, but I remember this Blu-ray went out of print for a long time. Now I got it on 4K. Gonna watch this for sure. These are heavy duty too. They got books in there. Now we go on to the John Roland. 2 Orphan Vampires. Love John Roland. Not as familiar with his work as I should be, although I've probably seen 10 movies or so. Yeah, but now I'm going to watch these in 4K, and he's a very visual director. So we have The Rape of the Vampire. I can't wait for Grapes of Death and Living Dead Girl to finally get their Blu-ray 4K releases from Indicator Powerhouse. So we have The Rape of the Vampire. That's an early one from him. Lips of Blood. I believe I've seen this one and enjoy it. Shiver of the Vampires. Very cool covers too. These, like I said, these are much heavier than you guys think. They have a book in there and everything. Just heavy duty good stuff. The Night of the Hunted from 1980. Interesting movie. Then we have probably my favorite of the ones, Fascination. Really good film here. Universe of Madness and Death. A lot of features too, man. Then we're going to hop in some Blu-rays here. Suicide Club. Great movie. One that I don't fully understand, but very interesting. Great director, I should say. Then we have The Beast Within. I have the Arrow edition, but I ended up picking up the Arrow edition. I had the Scream Factory, but I wanted to pick up the Arrow because I'm going to rewatch this. I wonder if there's some new features and everything. At least subtitles. Enjoyable movie by Philip Mora, Australian director. Then we have Morgiana, a film by Juan Hertz. And I picked up a couple of the Arrow. Arrow had a sale, and this looked really interesting. Horror film, 1972. And of course, The Guard from the Underground. This looks really good. Hong Kong flick, if I'm not mistaken. Third Window Films. We have, of course, some Vinegar Syndrome here. My OCN order is still on the way. Witch Story. This is one Italian film that I've not seen. But it's in 4K here, so that's pretty crazy. A lot of features on here as well. I don't know this one. I mean, I know it by title, but I've never seen it. Then we have The House Where Evil Lives. I've seen this in 1981. I believe I watched it for Joseph Cotton. It feels Delusion is the AK title. There we go. Yeah, very TV movie-esque, if I'm not mistaken. Then we have Lady Reporter with, of course, Cynthia Rothrock. I'm sure it's a fucking blast. All her movies seem to be incredibly fun and entertaining. Then we have Roger Corman's sale. We have Angels Hard As They Come. Good price on a lot of these. Couldn't pass them up. Big Bad Mama 1 and 2. They're all like $13 to $15, and they're usually $20 to $30. So I bought a bunch. Bury Me an Angel. The Wasp Woman. There's a couple that were sold out before I realized the sale was going on, so I guess I'll suffer. TNT Jackson, The Final Come Down, and Savage. Looks like a blaxploitation 3-pack. We have The Hot Box, Woman in Prison, probably shot in the Philippines movie. Corman, pretty typical, right? Looks fun. Street Girls. Looks exploitation fun. Maybe not so fun, I'm not sure. And then last, Sawbones, 1995. AK the Surgeon, is this AK the Surgeon? Adam Baldwin's in here. But yeah, I've never seen this one. If I did, I don't remember it. But yeah, we're back to the video, guys. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.
Thank you.